Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, July 5th, 2022, and today we are going to be talking about the political betting markets, more specifically predictit.org. Now, this is a website where people can pretty much just bet their own money on who they believe are going to win elections. You typically start to see people who are well informed or just interested in elections altogether looking at these predicted maps and putting together their own predictions for who will win, because people are putting their money towards this, which means that typically speaking, you start to see people remove their inherent level of bias because people, quite frankly, don't want to lose money. As much as a Republican might want a Republican to win in New York, they know that that is unrealistic. The same thing for Democrats in Wyoming. And that's why you start to see these predictive betting markets sometimes become a little bit more accurate than some of the political forums or mainstream media sources that are telling you about how elections are going to go. Now, the betting markets are not a perfect science. There are many times where they are entirely off, but you start to see trends and start to see this level of instability within a certain political party in terms of one that has maintained a level of control over the betting markets that has started to see a decline in the amount of shares and the amount of people that are willing to trust them with their money. And that's exactly what's happening here for the Republican Party. As you can see, the Republican Party is favored, according to the predicted market, to win control of the Senate after the 2022 elections, but it definitely was in a much better position for the GOP just a few weeks ago. A more recent trend has caused the Republican Party's thinking of their ability to win this election to decrease. The confidence, I would say, in people having the Republican Party in this position of a 75-cent share has decreased down to a point where now that percentage, if pretty much moved over to an exact percentage from cents, a 63% chance. Looking at the numbers for months on end, the Democrats had about a 1 in 4 chance at maintaining control of the U.S. Senate. That has now jumped up to about a 2 in 5 chance, nearly double where it was a few months ago. This is very impressive for the Democratic Party, but also the Republican Party's ability to maintain above water is also still very impressive. But we can't ignore this rapid decline in confidence in the GOP, something that can be explained by candidates in many of these races and potential nominees, practically speaking, presumptive nominees in many of these races, and what that means for the GOP. As I have been saying in many videos, I believe the 2022 midterms are honestly one of the best midterm scenarios for the GOP that we have seen in quite some time. And yet, they seem to be in a position where the Senate is still very much a toss-up. Now, the Senate Democrats back in 2018 had to really go through a lot in order to win control of the Senate. They were talking being down 2 seats or 3 seats that they needed to win, in addition to 10 seats that they were defending that Donald Trump won in 2 years prior. The Democratic Party needed to do a lot of work in 2018, and they simply fell short of their Senate goal. In fact, they lost seats. But that map was just not favorable for the Democratic Party, but that's not to excuse their inability to win control of the Senate. The Republican Party, I can't really make excuses for. I can't even find a real justification as to why they should not be the 95-5 favorites in this Senate map. To remind you of where we are right now, the Senate map is 50-50, meaning that all the Republican Party needs is just 1 seat. This is not some 2010 or 2014 deficit in the Senate majority, which, might I add, Republicans significantly narrowed up in both of those midterm years, winning control of the Senate by 4 seats in 2014. But this is just 1 seat. It is so exceptionally easy for the Republican Party to win. When we were looking at this 2 years ago, before we saw any numbers about Biden's approval or the generic ballot, it was pretty much guaranteed the Republican Party was going to win control of the House and win control of the Senate, because the majorities were just so exceptionally thin. But as the betting markets now suggest, the Senate is much more in play than where it was a few months ago, and it doesn't look as if the Republican Party has a 75% chance of victory anymore, which has narrowed down to about 63%, less than 2/3 from what was 3/4. It's something that, again, can be explained in many of these races, and we're going to go through each individual one. To start in the state of Pennsylvania, you see a very similar convergence between the Democrats being in the lead versus Republicans being in the lead around the same time that the national numbers changed on the control of the Senate market. You find that once Dr. Oz became the nominee and voters were a little bit more apprehensive, the Democrats took an advantage. And then when John Fetterman had some conditions that people worried about his health, people worried about his ability to campaign, the Republican Party started to take a narrow lead. But that has since been removed, and the Republican Party is now at one of their lowest points at quite some time. Yesterday, finishing at 43 cents for a yes share, whereas the Democrats maintained at 56. Now it's about a 10% difference between Democrats and Republicans in a seat that Republicans currently hold. This means that this is a pickup opportunity for the Democratic Party and a pickup according to the predicted market. So looking at this alone, this is certainly not a good sign for the GOP. But it's something that had changed following the nomination of Dr. Oz to this spot. Before the nomination had occurred, Republicans had a 62-cent share, meaning a 62% chance at victory. Democrats, on the other hand, were down at 40. It did start to climb as people got a little bit more confident in John Fetterman and his ability to win, but he had never taken the lead until Dr. Oz won that nomination, and voters became apprehensive, and that led Republicans and those betting on Republicans in general to be more apprehensive as well. It isn't just Pennsylvania, though. You head over to the state of Georgia, where for the past 3 months, Raphael Warnock has been losing to Herschel Walker in these predicted betting markets. At one point down to 36 cents for a yes share, down to 38 cents, whereas Republicans soared as high as 65 cents for a yes share. But that lead has been dramatically decreased and decreased and decreased to a point where now the Democrats are the favorites to win control in the U.S. Senate, win control of the Senate seat in the state of Georgia, despite for the past 3, 4, 5 months being the underdogs in this race. This is a change that likely has led to that sudden shift on the national numbers right around the same time where you saw a super significant dip. Because if Georgia was going red, Pennsylvania would have canceled that out if it was a pickup for the Democratic Party, and then all Republicans would have needed to do was maintain their lead in Nevada. But now the Democrats might win Georgia. The Democrats could maintain a level of 50-50, exactly what I expect to see according to my most recent projection in the beginning of July. A 50-50 map where Nevada goes red, Pennsylvania goes blue, and the rest of the states stay the same way. But this shift in Georgia shows that voters and people betting are more apprehensive about Herschel Walker than they were before. They are more willing to accept or believe that Warnock will win re-election. These numbers are telling us that there is something leading the unwillingness to back the GOP in Georgia, and I think a lot of it comes down to new data that has come out of the state that has made people more apprehensive. As I said, it's not just Georgia. It's not just the state of Pennsylvania. It's also the state of Arizona. Now, Republicans have a narrow lead in the state of Arizona. You're talking about a 4-cent lead here, so nothing super significant, but a lead regardless. But what you find is that that lead a month ago was so much bigger. This is very similar to what happened in the state of Georgia. You are talking about extremely large leads for the GOP, 66 cents to the Democrats, 36 cents. Where now Democrats took a narrow lead and are now neck and neck. How does something like this happen unless there's a shift in the U.S. Senate and a shift in the candidates here and who voters want to support? And that's exactly what happened. The Republican Party had potential strong nominees, which is why voters or people betting were originally very confident that the Republican Party was going to win. Republicans could have had Doug Ducey. They could have had Mark Brnovich. But now they have Blake Masters. Now, Blake Masters is someone that the Republican Party, I think, should honestly be fearful of becoming the nominee. He could become a U.S. Senator simply because of how close the state of Arizona is expected to be and where our national environment is, but I can't say he's the most electable. And I don't think that many people disagree with me, because otherwise the markets wouldn't narrow up in the exact time that the Blake Masters, the Republican primary market, skyrockets for Blake Masters' ability to win. Donald Trump endorsed him, he's leading in the primary polls, and will likely win that nomination spot. But that means that Mark Kelly has an easier candidate to beat. And the predicted betting markets absolutely understand that. Moving over to the state of Nevada, it has gotten closer, but Republicans have practically maintained their lead for the past 3 months. But as you've seen in Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona, you will also see a very similar dip around the exact same time. Now, it also does come as a result of the decision from the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, where it seems to be a more mainstream issue than it was before for very obvious reason. Not enough so that people expect the Democrats to win in the state of Nevada, but more than they expected Democrats to win a month ago, or 3 months ago, even at the start of this 90-day tracker. Nevada is probably going to go red, and I've acknowledged that in my video. But it doesn't matter if it goes red if it's counteracted by a pickup in the state of Pennsylvania, which again can lead to people being apprehensive about the GOP winning control of the U.S. Senate. A 55% chance is not something I'm willing to get behind if I was to throw a lot of my money towards this. It could go either way. Not to say that I would throw my money towards the Democrats if I could. I can't. I'm not 21. But I wouldn't throw my money in either direction because it is a true toss-up. It really could go either way. And the number you see right now tells you the Republican Party has a 55% chance of victory. Well, that's the deluxe model. We head over to Classic, Democrats have the advantage. You head over to Light, Democrats have a higher advantage, 58 to 42. So depending on where you're looking, Democrats are in fact the favorites to win the Senate. I just simply use the deluxe because I think it's the best one out there because it has a culmination of a lot of things. But if you want to look at it simply based off of fundraising, polls, and voting patterns, Democrats have the advantage. Or based off of what polls say alone, Democrats have the advantage. What this deluxe does is add in expert ratings to the classic forecast, meaning the one that takes in fundraising, polls, and voting patterns. But that still gives the Republican Party a narrow lead in the U.S. Senate. I wouldn't be confident in it either. So I've shown you Pennsylvania, I've shown you Georgia, I've shown you Arizona, I've shown you Nevada, and now we're going to take a look at the state of Wisconsin and the state of North Carolina. We'll get back to New Hampshire in just a moment. I brushed over it for whatever reason, but I wanted to show you some of these because not every single Senate seat has changed. Wisconsin and North Carolina really haven't seen any super significant changes or decreases in expectations for the Republican Party. North Carolina has practically maintained itself for quite some time, and that makes a lot of sense. Sherry Beasley, Ted Budd, both good nominees for their respective parties, but simply speaking, the national environment isn't on the side of the Democratic Party, it's on the side of the Republican Party. Biden's approval rating proves the exact same thing. Taking a look at the North Carolina numbers here, they don't change simply because Ted Budd was the right nominee. If it was Pat McCrory, I would expect this market to be somewhere around 55-45, 60-40 at best for the GOP. But Ted Budd was a good candidate. He was the right candidate. And now he has a very good shot at winning the election this November. And I think that really leads this confidence and trust in his ability to win. Because honestly speaking, he's one of the best GOP recruits that I've seen this election cycle. But based off of the rest of the candidates, I can't say that is saying much. Looking at the state of Wisconsin, Ron Johnson is running for re-election. He did start to see a narrow decrease in confidence, but you're talking about a 5% shift, a 5-cent shift. Nothing super significant, nothing that I would say is a direct indicator that Wisconsin is going to move in the direction against from where it was already trending. I think Republicans will win in Wisconsin. I think Ron Johnson will win re-election, and these numbers pretty much back that up. But as I skipped over the state of New Hampshire, this is where I see a very big shift. Because 2.5 months ago, the Republican Party was actually the favorites to win in the state of New Hampshire. But ever since then, Democrats have maintained a very high lead. Until now, more recently, Democrats have expanded this lead from what was 10%, 11%, to now 30% across the betting market. 65 cents for a Democratic yes share, 34 cents for a Republican yes share. A 2 in 3 chance the Democrats win in New Hampshire, where 2.5 months ago, Republicans were the favorite. And looking even at the deluxe forecast on 538, you find that Democrats are still the favorites to win in the state, a 70 to 30 chance. You head over to the classic model, and what do you find? It's about a 72 to 28 chance. You head over to the light model, and what do you find? It's a 66 to 34 chance. No matter what you're looking at, no matter classic, light, or deluxe, you find that the Democratic Party are undoubtedly the favorites in the state of New Hampshire. And you find that to be true in many other races, which is what is likely leading the apprehensiveness and the lack of confidence in the GOP's ability to win this midterm cycle. They had it so easy. I have never seen a scenario or an environment so beneficial for the GOP in quite some time. And I don't think many other people have. Not 2016, certainly not 2018, definitely not 2020. But 2022, everything was working out for them. And they still are the favorites, according to 538, depending on the model you look at. And that's not to push down against that. I still think the Democratic Party has a chance and is the likeliest favorites to win control of the U.S. Senate, maintain control of the U.S. Senate. But I can't say it's going to come easy. But I can also say they definitely have a lot to thank the Republican Party for. They can thank Donald Trump for Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, a race that would have been easily winnable for the GOP had Pat Toomey ran for re-election or Dave McCormick won that primary. I think that would have been good for the Pennsylvania GOP. I don't think that is the case now with Dr. Oz. I think the Republicans have to look back and see their nominees, not just Dr. Oz, but also Herschel Walker. Why was he the Senate nominee when you had Doug Collins right there? When you had other statewide officials who could have ran and some who did run, but barely won in their nomination, or barely did well in that nomination process. You also take a look at Blake Masters in Arizona. Had Doug Ducey ran in the Senate race, it would have been such an easy victory for the GOP. A very easy one at that. But that simply is not going to be the case. Had the Republican Party been able to field Chris Sununu or Kelly Ayotte in the state of New Hampshire, they would have been able to win that seat. They are not going to win that seat, at least as of right now. Republicans could have played these cards so much better. They could have gone into the Senate election and dominated and won a 54 to 46 advantage. But that simply is not going to be the case. It could happen. Don't get me wrong. We could see the odds flip. 45% is not a bad chance in Pennsylvania whatsoever. 46 cents in Georgia, not a bad chance whatsoever. 53 cents in Arizona, very good. 56 cents in Nevada, very good. But what I will say is that I expected these numbers to be a lot higher. And quite frankly, they were a lot higher until more recently. People are becoming more apprehensive, and it's not some momentary or shift for just right now. This is a shift that is likely going to continue to a level of high uncertainty about who will control the U.S. Senate simply because the GOP has nominated the wrong candidates and Democrats have fielded all the right ones in all of their races, maintained their incumbents in every race but one in a safe blue state at that, so it really doesn't matter. Republicans had 5 retiring incumbents. 2022 is absolutely a year for the GOP. But the question is, do they fumble the U.S. Senate in a similar fashion to the Democrats in 2018? Except this time, they don't have the excuse of a map that is unfavorable towards them. They don't have the excuse of an inability to get good candidates because they absolutely have them, and many of them ran and lost, or just simply dropped out because they wouldn't win the nomination from President Donald Trump. These Senate races could have gone a lot differently. We know this. They know this. And I think once we reflect on it back in November, not back, but ahead in November, we will find that these Senate races could have gone a lot differently had the GOP played their cards differently, which will definitely be quite fascinating to look back upon. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 Senate election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.